Hello, this is Deborah Cohen. I am glad you're here, either live or in the archives. Every Sunday morning, I broadcast live at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time on twitch.tv/ Deborah Cohen Music. And today we're doing something a little bit different. I'm actually going to have a guest teaching today, none other than my wonderful husband, Marty Cohen, and he's going to talk to us today about soul food. So, if you have in the next 30 minutes a place where you can be undistracted, maybe have pen and paper to take notes, we're going to talk to you today about a very important part of you right after this message. What's in your heart? What is your desire? Keeping your soul in the Father's hand. And my special guest today is sitting beside me. If you happen to be watching, if not, and you're listening on the podcast, well, then you can listen. Or if you want to see who we are that's really talking to you in your podcast, you can go to my YouTube channel. Just look for at Jewish Rock Music. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Marty Cohen, and I will be manning the chat. So if you have comments or questions, please post them during the live broadcast. Go ahead, Marty.
Hey, y'all. I'm Marty Cohen, and it's a real privilege to get to talk to y'all today. As Deborah mentioned, today we're going to dig into some really, really tasty soul food. Now, not collard greens and okra and tomatoes and such, but today we're going to feast on some really tasty knowledge of the soul that gives us life and love and hate and so much more. This week, I stumbled across an interesting message about elevating the soul in one of my daily devotional readings. All right. And it led me back to a book that I've had in my Kindle collection for years and years and years. But when I got it, I kind of grew tired of it after the first 3 or 4 chapters. I just set it aside, left it alone. But this new mention of the topic took me back to the book titled The Soul. And it's written by this modern rabbinic sage named Rabbi Eden Israel Steinsaltz. You can get it on Facebook, either in print or like I did, Kindle. But anyway, Friday morning in my morning devotional time, I started rereading it from chapter 1. All right. And so Friday night, when I shared some of what I'm learning with Deborah after our Kabbalat Shabbat, which is our time of welcoming the Sabbath with our online hopefully soon to be home congregation, she asked me to share with you on this broadcast today. And I, of course, said, look, I'll come on when I have more to share. I'm only a couple chapters into the book. But then I remembered something else that focused my attention. All right. Since I was returning to this book, and because of her request, it reminded me of a quote from Pirkei Avot, which means the sayings or the ethics of the fathers. And in Post 216, it says this: Rabbi Tarfun would say, "It is not incumbent upon you to finish the task, but neither are you free to absolve yourself from it." And so here I am, folks, and B'ezrat Hashem, with the help of God, I'll return as I learn some more. Well, this wonderful book is about who, not what, the soul is, all right? How do we recognize him or her? How does this very much alive being manifest itself? Well, basically, this modern Talmudic genius starts out with a basic premise that most people accept, that everyone has a soul, all right? But not everyone knows anything about why we have it or its function. So, okay, I have one. So, how can I relate to this part of me? We want to know, what is it really all about? Well, the first thing to know is that your soul is not an it. Your soul is a he or a she. Now, how does this living being manifest itself? Well, for this, I'm going to read a bit from the book. And that's what I'm going to be coming back and forth to, just talking to you and reading. So, quote, A very important influence on how the soul manifests its level of the soul itself. High souls is a clear, strong soul, and whoever has such a soul is strongly aware of it, more so than someone whose soul is small or low. Now, there are people whose great souls will be revealed in everything they do, in their breadth of vision, in the loftiness of their desires, and in their ability to perceive hidden spiritual insights. At root, the difference between a high and a low soul is the difference between those whose souls are based on expansive vision and lofty goals, and those whose desires and horizons are kind of narrow and confined. All right. And you probably know where you fit in there. Right. Anyway, these differences are unrelated to anything that can be explained in terms of material existence. God distributes souls in a manner that just seems arbitrary to us. And although we do not choose our souls or the way they reveal themselves, all of us are capable of discovering more noble elements within ourselves. Get that now. All of us are capable of revealing more noble elements that we have within us. All right. There is an inner work to be done, however, and this is important. We must access the higher levels of our souls and cause them to manifest within our active consciousness. Now, get this, folks. I'm going to read this to you. All of the levels of the soul exist within every single person, right there in the book. All right. By accessing the higher levels, we're able to liberate ourselves from the assumptions of a particular culture or the assumptions of a point in history we happen to live in. The vehicle through which our souls are manifest is usually an epiphany of some kind. It's beyond time, space, culture, or any level of the soul. An epiphany can be thought of as a sudden insight of great importance that seems to just come out of the blue. End quote for now, okay? Now, in our Shabbat service yesterday, the man sitting in for our rabbi mentioned an item in the Torah portion that starts in Numbers chapter 8 about these two men who were speaking in a strong, strange voice of prophecy. And Joshua, Moses' assistant, he brought this accusation to Moses and was shocked when Moses says, oh, that all the children of Israel would prophesy. Now, a point in the book is that all the children of Israel, all the children of the world have this spiritual epitome, all right, to attain this place of prophecy. All of us have the ability to hear the voice of God and declare it to the world. Each of us attains higher levels of our soul because of some epiphany. All right. I know, I think, I feel, even I'm alive are manifestations of self-awareness, but they can't truly bring us closer to a real familiarity with our souls. All right. Some people are inclined to, contemplate the essence of their souls, and others, a lot of people can live their entire lives, even lives of intellectual activity, without even taking on any interest in their souls at all. All right. We know some people like that, don't we, Deborah? I'm not into a lot of spiritual stuff, but anyway.
Actually, we've been there.
Yeah, that's true. That's exactly right.
Yeah, in our younger years, decades ago, we didn't know how to feed the soul.
Didn't even think about it, Didn't even think about the soul. Not at all. Okay. All right, let me get back to the book. Quote, these different attitudes are influenced by personality, certainly, but also by our inner world of experiences. Those whose lives are externally centered do not give their souls much thought. The more we are aware of inner experiences, such as love and hate, hope, despair, the greater awareness of the full depth and breadth of our souls comes. But even people who are self-aware, who spend at least some time thinking about their souls, do not usually reach beyond the scope of their existing experiences. So while every person has a soul, the soul eludes definition. Now, the Maharal, who was Rabbi Judah ben Bezalel, he was a Talmudic scholar from the 16th century, he puts it this way. In one way or another, we all sense our soul and know that it exists, yet we don't know what it really is. It's been said of God, he's the closest being, and yet he's the most distant. So too the soul. These and other mysteries that dwell beyond intellectual consciousness have been revealed to only a few individuals over the course of time. End quote. All right. So you see that this study may really touch the lives of a whole bunch of folks, and that's certainly my hope. All right. Now, according to ancient mystical literature, the Kabbalah, and I got to tell y'all something. Deborah got me involved in reading Kabbalah stuff 3 or 4 years ago. All right. And this morning she said something about Kabbalah, and I said, hey, or last night she said something about Kabbalah. I said, hey, you haven't even read my pitch yet, my presentation yet. I'm going to be talking about Kabbalah. She said, really? I said, yep, that's all I'm going to tell you. So anyway, the Kabbalah shows us a somewhat clear representation of the levels of our soul. And they basically correspond to the 10 manifestations of God himself. Kabbalah teaches us about the Sephirot, all right? We'll learn about that in a minute. In the development of Kabbalistic literature, the idea was expanded and elaborated to denote the 10 stages emanated from Ein Sof, the infinite. Ein Sof means without end, all right? The knowledgeable God, unknowable God, all right? By which God the Creator can be discerned. Each sephira refers to an aspect of God as Creator, and the rhythm by which one sephira unfolds into another was believed to represent the rhythm of creation. All right, the mystical nature of the sephirot and the precise way in which they function were often disputed by Jews and non-Jews who refused and tend to refute spiritual heights like this.
Yes.
I'm not spiritual, some
Right,
people say.
right.
Until, yeah. Anyway, the individual sephirot are these. Keter Elyon, which means supreme crown. Chama, wisdom. Bina, intelligence. Chesed is love, all right? Gevura, might. Tiferet, beauty. Nitzah, eternity. Hod, majesty. Yesod, foundation. And Malchut, kingship. Now, the Sephirot have been called by other names, and the most popular being like crowns or attributes or principles or even steps, all right? These are arranged in a triad form, all right? So there's a right column, a left column, and a center column. And so since they're in threes, guess what? The rabbis, of course, have brought together all sorts of teachings. Now, let's go back to the text for a minute, all right? Quote, according to Jewish mystical literature, there are several levels of the soul, and they are parallel to levels in the spiritual universe in general. In the language of the Kabbalah, the Nephesh level corresponds to our world. It's called the world of action. The Ruach corresponds to the world of formation, and the Neshama level corresponds to the world of creation. Because these worlds, despite their differences, are in a certain sense a single unit, the levels Nephesh, Ruach, and Neshama, although distinct, are located in a single continuum. They're all on one of those columns, all right? The higher levels of the soul, the Chaya level, essentially corresponds to the world of Azilut, or proximity to God, which is not exactly a world, but it's more of a type of divine revelation. Therefore, people seldom discover this level. When they do, it's only thanks to a tremendous effort on their part, which enables them to ascend and reach some level of connection with the divine revelation. The highest level, the level of Yahida, is beyond even the world of Azilut, and in a certain sense, it's not even part of a soul of a specific individual, but it's included in the primary source of all souls. That's why it's called Yahida. It means singular. It is the singular general soul that is shared by all of us. Throughout the generations, there have been only a few individuals called Masters of the Chai, an acronym for Chaya Yahida, who achieved enlightenment of a level of Chaya Yahida, essentially setting themselves apart from other human beings but yet it is possible for human beings to ascend from one level to a higher level, but it is a task involving great exertion. In fact, our spiritual personas can be likened to a multi-story building where the first lowest floor of the building is Nephesh level. Above it, the Ruach level, and above that, Neshama level. Above that is the lofty level of the soul called Chayeh, and above that is the ultimate level called Yachida. All of these levels exist within every one of us. Get that, people. All of the levels exist within each one of us. I love that phrase. However, some of them are only attained by certain individuals. Most of us dwell on the ground floor of this multi-story building, the Nephesh level, and not even necessarily occupy the floor fully. We start to ascend when our awareness of inner selves does not remain at the first level, but starts to rise. While success in making this ascension is due in some measure to the grace of God and our God-given gifts, it depends first and foremost on our own conscious decision to attempt to climb. But most people choose to remain on the ground floor. And there are those who actually prefer the basement, all right? But remember this, folks, the entire building is open to anyone who makes the effort. It just takes deciding and studying and make the effort. For our purposes here, in other words, in these first two chapters, we're interested in two levels: the soul, the nephesh, the vital soul, and the neshama, the godly soul. At the most basic level, everything in the animal world has a nephesh.
Nephesh, the soul, the body.
Yeah, it's the body soul, all right? For human beings, as we have seen, the nephesh is the lowest level of our non-material existence, thoughts, feelings like that, all right? And we're in constant contact with it. But unlike the nephesh, which includes many components related to both the physical and the spiritual sides of life, the main characteristic of the neshama, a soul, any soul, is that it is a spark of God. This is why the entirety of the soul's existence is impelled toward its creator. From another perspective, we can say that the difference between the nephesh and the neshama lies in their foundations and their basic inclinations. The nephesh is the self, the more conscious part of our inner being, and it works within every person to fulfill the needs and desires of the self, whether they are physical or instinctive or abstract and spiritual. The neshama, on the other hand, is not driven by the self. It exists beyond the self. It has no physical anchor. It is spiritual and abstract. It's not directly involved with the human body. It's involved with the sanctity and with the human relationship with God. It connects with the human self through the nephesh. Now let's take a short. Go ahead.
I think that's worth repeating after the break.
Okay.
This would be a good place. Yeah, repeat that phrase when we come back, because that is really powerful to know that each one of us has the potential to elevate our soul being, starting at nephesh, the self-inclination, and then rising up to get in touch with neshama, the spiritual self.
Absolutely.
Many people that I've met resist, or they think it's woo-woo stuff. So when we come back, could you just tell us, is this only for, you said it's for all people, but are you talking?
That's right.
Are you talking about a certain religion? So I'll hold it there and you can tell us when we come back.
I'll do that. Thank you. Bye, y'all.
And we're back, and I'm Deborah Cohen, and my husband, Marty Cohen, is teaching a phenomenal teaching on everyone's soul.
Oh, shucks. Phenomenal. Thank you. All right. Deborah asked me to kind of step back and talk about what I just said. All right. The neshama is not driven by the soul. All right. The nephesh is the part we just regular, everyday. It does what our body wants us to do. But the neshama does what the Spirit of God wants us to do. All right. And unlike what a lot of people think, this is not just for woo woo, crazy hippie Jewish people. All right. It's not even just for Jewish people, it's for all people. And it's not for just for hippies, it's for people of every generation. And it's no woo woo to it at all. It's real, real stuff. All right. And so let me go back and start reading a little bit more. The vehicle through which our souls are manifest is usually an epiphany of some kind. It's beyond time, place, culture, or level of the soul. An epiphany can be thought of as a sudden insight of great importance that comes out of the blue, but not all epiphanies are the same. They differ in nature and effect from person to person. They can even differ within the lifetime of a single person, right? For instance, most of us achieve some awareness, even if faint, of the existence of our souls. This awareness usually arrives through a simple recognition that beyond the self, there's something deep within us that we cannot really name. For most people who experience them, epiphanies of the soul appear intermittently, whether for a short time or a longer period, and then they vanish. End quote. Epiphanies. One epiphany that forever changed my life, all right, was the very first time I leaned my head against the stone wall of the Kotel in Jerusalem. Now, had there not been a friend at my side, I would have fallen to the street. Now, I've returned to that wall many, many, many times, but every time I go, it's been life impacting, but it's never like the first time. A real major, actually, I would say the major epiphany was after my previous wife had passed and I was ready to find the woman whom God had prepared for me to complete my life with. In those days, I was a major player on Facebook. I'd been teaching people Torah for a real long time on Facebook. And so after an appropriate time, I went and searched there. And the first woman I thought, this is her name was Karen. We dated for a while, became engaged, and she'd been a member for 7 years at a congregation in Texas that I had found a Torah scroll for. And the rabbi and we were friendly. So he agreed to do the wedding. Meanwhile, Deborah, my true Beshert, the one who completes my destiny, she was looking first for a righteous synagogue and was referred there on the Shabbat when the rabbi was going to announce the wedding and invite everyone to come. All right. So I walked in wearing this beautiful tie-dyed tunic that caught her eye. And since she was not just in search of a righteous synagogue, but she was in search of a righteous rabbi to marry, she thought, maybe this is the reason I was here. Until the rabbi asked me and Karen to come up to the bima to make the announcement. Well, that kind of shot it for Deborah. Well, it took me about 6 weeks to realize that I'd made a real mistake. So I broke the engagement. And the night I did, I posted on Facebook that I was not going to look for a wife anymore. She'd have to find me. Almost immediately, I got a reply. It was 7:00 on Wednesday night. And this reply said, Deuteronomy states that a man shall find his wife. And I replied, I'll find her when God brings her to me. To which Deborah replied, I was there. And I said, where? And well, the rest is the most wonderful history of my entire life. So that was a big
Thank
epiphany.
you for sharing that. And if I may say, when I found your post on Facebook, I'd never met you before.
Right.
And I kept looking for Mr. Right. And I was in my 60s at this time, early 60s. And I did correct you. I didn't say Deuteronomy, though. I said it's in Mishle, in Proverbs.
Yeah, right.
The
I'm
man,
sorry.
that man that
Right.
finds a wife finds a good thing.
Good
so,
yeah.
That's great. Thank you.
Indeed, it was, and it's changed my life for sure. All right, let's go back to the book to finish. All right, these spontaneous bursts of light that some experience cause a sense of spiritual elevation. Mine sure did. On the other hand, there are people, probably a minority, in whom the soul reveals itself frequently, consistently, recognizably. The epiphany of the soul for such individuals is almost like a heartbeat. Excuse me. It accompanies them daily and through every situation. It has a certain basic permanency. In this type of epiphany, there are normally no exceptional climatic experiences or unusual visions, but simply the general state of being illuminated with inner light, which even others may notice. In addition to this range of ephemeral epiphanies, it is possible that on any ordinary day or in the face of any significant or even tragic incident, you may experience an epiphany and through it, discover your soul. This would be a this would be dramatic, possibly even terrifying event with no real explanation, rational or otherwise, for what occurred. Just this feeling that your soul is within you. Through such experiences, which can happen to anyone, you do not discover great mysteries or sudden revelations. Rather, the familiar is suddenly seen in a new light through a different eyes. An epiphany of the soul can be terrifying because it brings about a new and different perspective on all of reality. It gives rise to questions like, what do I do now? Or what have I been doing these last 20 years? This is reminiscent of the question God asked Adam after the sin of the Garden of Eden. Where are you, Adam? End quote. Of course, God knew where Adam was. But you know what? Sometimes God says, hey, it's time for Adam, it's time for you and for me to realize where we are. All right. And but sometimes it's just a shake up call, a shake up and wake up call. All right. My last epiphany has elevated me to a point to this guy who walks in that ephemeral walk all the time. I see things around me differently as I did before. All right. Everything is new and exciting every minute of every day. All right. So I hope I've given you something to think about. And I pray that as I learn something deep and new from my study of the book, The Soul by Rabbi Eden Israel Steinsaltz, Deborah will invite me back to a story and a song. Now, I will tell you this every Sunday morning, as Deborah is doing this, I am starting to put together my weekly Haftorah teaching that is a Sepharia um, study that I put together every Sunday afternoon. And so I hope you'll come back to a story and a song every single Sunday at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and that you'll study my posts, which you can find on Sepharia, or it's easier just to find it on facebook.com/Marty Cohen 18. And so hope to see y'all soon. Shabbat Shalom, y'all.
Well, thank you, Marty Cohen. Hopefully, that was more than an eye opener, but a soul opener. And I like how you describe the writings in this book, that we all have the potential to
Right.
elevate the soul for the sake of a relationship with the God of Israel. And this opportunity is available to anyone who is seeking. And it starts for each one of us at different times.
Let me make a point. You said to have a relationship with the God of Israel. Yes, He is the God of Israel. But in the case of this book, I think it's important to realize He's the God of creation. All right.
Yes.
And so, and I mean, Genesis starts out by God describing Himself as, hey, I am the God who brought you out of Egypt. All right. Now, in Jewish thinking, every single Jewish soul was at Sinai. All right. And every single non Jewish soul was at Sinai. And so we've all been brought out of Egypt, Mitzrayim, which means a narrow place, and now we're in a broad space. So
Right. Thank you. And
for
so
all
what we have to do, of course, is if you love Hashem, the God of Israel, you will obey his commandments. And of course, there's a lot of dispute over what the word obey means, but that's not for this broadcast.
another lesson.
Yeah. So I encourage you again, if you have questions or want to find out more about Marty Cohen, to go to Safaria.org and look for Marty Cohen, Cohen. And I'd like to close. You mentioned, Marty, about epiphany. And my first epiphany came to me as a teenager in a church where I was listening to singing songs. And as I've gotten older and continue to pursue a relationship with Hashem, understanding, wisdom, and knowledge, I discover, of course, in our Siddur, it's all about singing to God.
Right.
That is a sure way. If you sing, not because you have a good voice, but
right.
but if you sing, and by the way, you can have a better voice if you take ear training. That's a hint for everybody that sings off key. But if you sing from your heart, your mind, your soul, and your spirit, that's in Deuteronomy, then God promises, if you seek me, you will find me. And when we sing, we engage more than just the mind. We engage all of us. And so I want to let you know that as you continue to practice singing, it's a lifetime thing. Your physical experiences, your epiphanies will continue into a deeper level that you mentioned, Marty, Atzilut, that level that Moshe Rabbeinu experienced when he came down the mountain. He was so full of the light of Hashem, or the light of Torah, that people asked him to cover his face because he was so bright. And that light that starts out, you mentioned the neshama, the sparks of God that are in each one of us, we are a candle, and they become illumined as we continue to sing from the heart. And I want to share with you a video that I had made in 2016 when I was singing Psalm 103 in my RV at that time. I hadn't met you yet, Marty, but right. I was singing Psalm 103 because it really fed my soul. And I started to realize in this video, as I was singing, that I was connecting in a deeper way to God. And hopefully, if you're watching the video, you can see where I start to cut loose, or meaning I'm breaking away the klipa by singing heartfelt song to God.
And let me point out that I've heard this. I've seen this video, and the klipa, that's the shell that keeps us stuffed in, all right? It will elevate your soul, as well as Deborah's soul was elevated just doing the singing. Watching this will elevate your soul, I promise. Shalom, y'all.
Blessed Adonai, oh my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgives all my iniquities, who heals all my diseases, who redeems my life from destruction, and crowns me with loving kindness.